Atlanta's future flows through water, shaping how we live, grow, and thrive. As the city expands, aging infrastructure and rising demand present new challenges. Building a resilient, efficient, and equitable water system will require bold ideas, strong community leadership, and innovative partnerships. Atlanta-based journalists Grace Donnelly and GHD explore bold ideas and real solutions, drawing inspiration from global innovation and local expertise to help Atlanta lead the way in water security for generations to come. But as pressures mount, one question remains: will Atlanta's water system be able to support the demand?
Thank you so much for joining me today, Colleen, to talk about the water infrastructure in Atlanta and the changes that'll be needed as we move toward 2050 as part of the My City 2050 series. Could you tell me a little bit about 2 or 3 of the challenges that Atlanta is facing as it grows and moves toward the middle of this century?
So Atlanta has had a wonderful history of growing. It has grown from a very small system to a very large system. And in the process, when it was growing, it has acquired other systems. So just to give you a small picture of that, like the downtown Atlanta around Georgia Tech, the system is almost over 130 years old. So Atlanta has a spread. Now it has over a million, like maybe 1.2 million people that it serves. So it ought to have some challenges. And the challenges really comes with growth, with age. One of the main challenges that Atlanta faces today in the water supply system are some of the aged pipelines, the transmission mains, which carry the bulk of the water from the beginning, the distribution when actually it distributes into the neighborhoods. So the transmission main from time to time breaks. So the main breaks are one of the biggest challenges Atlanta faces from the public perspective today. The one challenge that public does not actually get to see much is on the treatment side of it. So the treatment plants like the Hemphill treatment plant, which supply most of the water to Atlanta, is over 100 years old. There's absolutely a need to replace the treatment plant itself. And there's another plant, which is the Chattahoochee treatment plant, which is also almost aged out and almost runs at capacity. Also, the water pressure in the south of Atlanta has a water pressure issue, which is quite alarming to the point sometimes the water doesn't get to the end.
So you touched on a couple different challenges that Atlanta faces with its water systems. It'll take several billions of dollars in projects to modernize some of that infrastructure. Is there a role you see private-public partnerships playing in being able to fund and accelerate some of those improvements to the system?
There's absolutely a place for a private funding and private partnership. So that's where the large stakeholders, they can bring some of that funding and technology up front, and then funding gaps can be filled. And there are short-term solutions and long-term solutions. And some of the short-term solutions, which will help alleviate some of these issues, can be worked together with the private funding and Atlanta's own funding together in a partnership that can actually resolve it.
So obviously, if you're working on the water systems in Atlanta, you have to keep providing water to residents. There can't be a break in that kind of service. Are there other examples of times the city has been able to make improvements without interrupting the service for citizens here?
Atlanta has a success story. Hartsfield-Jackson Airport, which is the busiest airport in the world, as people know. It has about 110 million passengers just come in and go. It is widening Concourse D, and it's a 2 to 3 year project. But while they're actually widening the concourse, they're doing it in a way that the traffic is actually increasing while they're actually doing it. So they're keeping the service, they're keeping airlines, there are no delays. While they're doing that, they're also expanding on the parking structures and the roadway, other infrastructure. So that means what they're really doing is changing the tire on a car, but the car is still moving, right? So the similar example, actually similar, can be done on the Atlanta water system. And really what needs to be done, because Atlanta has a commitment with the so-called ratepayers. So ratepayers at least expect from the EPA perspective, 40 PSI at the meter, so they can have a water and basically so Atlanta could actually do some of that.
So are there examples of water system modernization projects in other areas that Atlanta could look to as success stories and examples?
Yes. So, Toronto's Ashbridges Bay, wastewater treatment plant, which was design, build, own, operate, resulted in a saving of a 25% savings. So that is really a good example. Another example is a Washington, D.C. environmental impact bond, which actually brought in a grant of $15 million tied with the green water infrastructure. And the third example really is a Singapore public utility, where having more like real-time monitoring and efficient use was very effective in having that 35, almost close to like 30% reuse citywide. So yeah.
So looking ahead to 2050, could you share some of the kind of ideal solutions for improving Atlanta's water resilience?
So Atlanta has always been growing, and it will grow. The way the state is very welcoming, the city is very welcoming to the new businesses, and a lot of businesses are moving in. So the vision is that we would replace our treatment plants in due time. We would fix our pipes in due time, and we can modernize our pipes using smart technologies, as GHD has done other places. We would be able to basically here, use smart sensors, using in a real-time modeling where not just the water side, but the stormwater side, on the sewer side, some of the challenges that the city has in terms of flooding that happens on the people's town, and bringing in the reuse of water would really help, especially for major industrial uses, for parks, for irrigation purposes. These challenges can actually be overcome in due time. So I'm really hoping that in the future, we would be able to cover some of these challenges with the cooperation with the private side funding, and also in the short term to using some of these technologies while we are building for the future.
Well, Khalid, thank you so much for joining us and for talking about your experience and expertise with the water systems in Atlanta and what infrastructure updates might look like in 2050 for the My City 2050 series.
Thank you, and you're welcome.
Yeah, pleasure.